if it comes down to this, I'm hiring Dave Wannstedt. I'm running the ball 3 downs, and then I'm going to punt. Trubisky, 30th in the NFL in average per pass. I don't think you can win with either one of these guys.
You're not taking either of them. That's tough. I would take Trubisky, but
you would take Trubisky over Jameis. All right, so let's go to the next one. Jameis or Jacoby Brissett?
Listen, Jacoby Brissett is the easy answer for me here. Jacoby Brissett, before he got hurt, was 5-2, had 14 touchdowns and 3 picks. This is an easy answer because I know Jacoby Brissett values the football. He's an ascending player. I have a pretty good idea who Jameis Winston is.
Next, Jameis or Derek Carr?
Yeah, this one's tough, but I'm going to go with Derek Carr just because he had a decent year last year. They really struggled scoring points, but when you look at his completion percentage, 3rd down, at least it's ascending with John Gruden. I don't think it's ideal, but Derek Carr to be over Winston.
How about Jameis or Teddy Bridgewater?
If I had 100 checks, I would put them, Greeny. This is Teddy Bridgewater checks for days. Teddy Bridgewater, to me, I will pay Teddy Bridgewater double what I'm going to pay Jameis Winston because I know every chance I step on the field with Teddy Bridgewater, he's not going to force my team to lose the game. That's an easy answer for me, Greeny. Teddy Bridgewater.
I get it. So I understand that I'm taking the unpopular position here. No one took Jameis over literally anyone in that little exercise. And I understand. The biggest criticism I would offer of Jameis Winston is that I still view him as a prospect, but he's a 5-year NFL veteran. But I still keep thinking, if they could just coach a little bit of those turnovers out of him, we always overlook the things he does well. He's the only quarterback who threw for 5,000 yards last year. I know he's putting them behind in games, but he's always bringing them back. If they could just rein in a little bit of the bad, his ceiling, his upside, I think, is higher than any of the 4 other quarterbacks.
His upside might be higher, but his issues and the way he hurts his football team is higher.
So you've given up on the notion that will ever happen.
No, I think you're making an interesting point because sometimes we see quarterbacks develop later in their careers. Vinny Testaverde on his 3rd team. We saw it with Rich Gannon. So he does have elite talent, but I agree. Dirk Cutter's a good coach. Bruce Arians a good coach, but he is young. I just don't think he gets a starting job, Greeny, without some competition, much the way Ryan Tannehill had to do it last season.
It'll be interesting.
All quarterback options are available, and if Jameis asks for too much, he probably is not going to be here. This is a team that was 7-9 last year and feels like, you know, if they just had one less interception from Jameis, they probably would have won a lot of those games just because 9 of those games were decided by 7 points or less.
We talk about guys getting stuff coached out of them. The turnovers, to a point Mike Tannenbaum made in a different context earlier this morning, frequently don't get coached out. And clearly in the case of Jameis Winston, they have not been. So Dan Orlovsky, I would ask, are you ready to give up on this? You can't throw 30 interceptions. Are you basically ready to give up on it?
Absolutely, because I know what Jameis Winston is. He's turned the ball over since 2013. He did it his last year at Florida State, and we've got to move on from that. Here's the reality. In the NFL, you win 80% of the games that you win the turnover margin. The Bucs since 2015 have the 2nd worst turnover margin since Jameis Winston has been their starting quarterback. He's turned the ball over 4 more times, 8 games in 70 starts. As a head coach, Greeny, there is no way that you stand in front of your football team and say, guys, the easiest way for us to win games is win the turnover margin, and then march Jameis Winston out for your starting quarterback. They don't mesh together.
I think one of the most underrated storylines last year was the job that Todd Bowles did. The second half of the season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense was top 10. If they get average quarterback play, they could be in the playoff discussion. So I think what's interesting is if Jameis doesn't re-sign in Tampa Bay, who's going to give him the starting job? I would see him having to go compete much the way Ryan Tannehill had to do this year.
Can I take the other side of this? And obviously, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. What you're saying is obvious. But when we talk about average quarterback play, I think sometimes with Jameis, we just overlook the things he does well. I mean, my joke with Jameis is always that the game starts 14-14.
Right.
He's going to throw 2 touchdowns for both teams before it starts, and then we'll see what happens from there. And look, I understand that I go back to an older time in the NFL where quarterbacks were a little more swashbuckling, and they overcame turnovers from time to time because they would throw you 380 yards and 3 touchdowns. And if you could just limit it a little, Josina, to the point that you made, if you could limit it to 20 interceptions, which is still by this margin, by this measure, a big number, I still feel like there's a chance.
Coach Belichick always had the axiom, let the other team lose the game. Turnovers, penalties. If we just take care of our business, a lot of times they're going to make a mistake, and that's what Jameis Winston's been, despite all that talent.
This is still a quarterback that threw for over 5,000 yards.
The only one.
Okay, and you were saying, oh, he is what he is, but how many coaches has he had? How many offensive coordinators? You know what? But you know what helps a quarterbacks? Consistency. So let him have another year with Bruce.
Listen,
how many coaches has he had?
I'm the person who stands up for players, quarterbacks with bad coaching or bad players. He's had two really good offensive minds in Dirk Cutter and Bruce Arians. He's had a ton of talent. The issue has been the issue since Florida State, since 2013. Jameis Winston.
You think he's going to have another 30 interception year?
I don't think he's going to have a 38 interception 10 or 38 touchdown 10 interception year. Absolutely not, because he's never done it.
We're so glad you're watching ESPN on YouTube.
For more sports, highlights, and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app.
And for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus. We'll see you there.